So in this video, I'm going to explain how to buy 10 rental properties in 5 years using the BRRRR strategy. The first question you have to ask yourself is, what do you want real estate to do for you? So there's a lot of different strategies in real estate, but you ideally want to know what you want real estate to do for you. So in this example, you're investing in real estate for the cash flow. So if you figured out you want cash flow, and that's the reason why you're investing in real estate, you now need to figure out how much cash flow do you need to maintain your life and or to leave your job. So once you understand the reason why you're investing into real estate is for the cash flow, now you want to figure out how much cash flow do you need each month to maintain your lifestyle. And once you figured out this number, this is the number that once you hit it, you most likely can leave your job. For this example, let's just say you need a cash flow of $10,000 per month or $120,000 per year so that you can eventually leave your full-time job. So once you've figured out the amount of cash flow needed each month, now you need to figure out how many properties you need to buy to generate that amount of cash flow each month. So let's just say in this example, for each multifamily building you buy, which would be anywhere from 2 to 5 units, each of those buildings would produce a cash flow of $1,000 to $1,500 each month. And it would be a good idea for this to be after reserves, right? So that would be a net cash flow of about $1,000 or $1,500 each month. So if you bought 10 of these properties, you would eventually achieve your goal for having $10,000 of cash flow each month. So step one, you would first need to figure out the money to purchase your first building. And with that, you would need good credit. And with good credit, you would also need a good paying job. You would need a good paying job to get mortgages on the properties. Additionally, you're going to need money on the side because you're going to need to renovate these properties and you're going to have to fund these renovations yourself. So when it comes to income, ideally you want a full-time job, good paying job. Ideally you want to be working there for maybe a couple years, and it needs to be consistent work. You need good credit overall around the 700 mark. And the idea is you can obviously buy property with lower credit, but you're going to get the best rates with higher credit. So for the first property, I recommend buying a 2 to 5 unit building in a great location that needs work. You can also decide to live in the building if you want to. This obviously depends on your financial situation and where you are in life. But if you want to save money, obviously live in that building and maybe renovate one unit. And then once that one unit is done, rent it out and then renovate another one and so on. This process for your first property should probably take 6 to 8 months. Your first property is probably going to take you the longest, but after that, you should be able to do this process a lot faster. So once you completed the renovations on the property, as I mentioned, you rent out the building to tenants, ideally at market rate. Once the building has been fully rented, then you get an appraisal done, and ideally that appraisal will be obviously a lot more than what you purchased it. You take that appraisal back to your mortgage broker or the bank to get the building reappraised, and then at this time you would pull out that equity with this new mortgage, and done right, you should be able to obtain your money that you put into the property in terms of the renovations and then also the down payment, and you might be able to pull out additional money. But this is where I recommend going through the numbers, because you always have to remember the more money you pull out in terms of equity, the higher your mortgage payments could be, right? And you have a goal to cash flow $1,500 per month, right? Or around that $1,000 mark per property. So you don't want to over leverage the property too much so you don't cash flow. It will definitely be tempting to pull out more money, especially if it's available, but always look back at your goals and at your financial projections, just because you want to hit those targets so you get that cash flow you need. After completing the first building, now you're going to be looking at the second building. Again, you'll have all your capital returned, and you're going to basically repeat the process. Find a distressed building in a great location, and you can again move into the building or just renovate it, right? And basically you are just repeating the process. And like I said, the first building will take you a little bit longer, but the second building should be faster, and then the third building, and then the fourth building, and so on. Each building you should be a little bit faster and faster, but at the same time, if you want to go a lot faster, I would recommend building a team. For example, A contractor will help expedite the process, and then also a property manager will also help expedite this process. And if you have a timeline of about 6 months, 6 to 8 months per property, you should be on track to hitting that target 5 years to acquire 10 properties. And then once you hit that 10 property mark, you should be in a great position to be able to leave your job, because you would be making anywhere from $10,000 or more in cash flow per month. And think about the equity position you'll have in all those properties, and also all the assets you have accumulated over the years. One of the great aspects about this process I really like is because once you have completed this whole process and you do have these 10 buildings that are cash flowing, what's great about this is, one, if you implemented the proper systems, you do now have a property manager taking care of all this, right? And usually rents will gradually increase over time. So eventually your $10,000 cash flow per month will start to increase over time. And then the other aspect of it is, the other point would be, you have to remember the tenants are paying down your mortgage. So each year, your equity position in those properties increases because the tenants are slowly paying down those mortgages. So here are a few things to consider when implementing this strategy. So when it comes to financing, I strongly recommend building up relationships with mortgage agents, brokers, and if you want to go to a bank, ideally build up a relationship with the bank. I don't recommend just using one bank because banks usually are risk adverse. So once you hit maybe around 4 to 5 properties, it might get a little bit harder for you to keep acquiring properties, especially if it's the 1 to 4 unit buildings, right? Anything in terms of 5 plus might be a little bit different, but I know banks look at your personal financials when it comes to smaller properties. Another point would be residential versus commercial. So when it comes to the amount of units, like for example, 1 to 4 units, this would be considered residential. When it comes to 5 units or more, that is commercial, and you would be getting commercial financing. I recommend to focus more on the commercial side, so ideally 5 units or more, because you'll start to realize that financing becomes a little bit easier this way. The banks don't really look at your credit or your personal finances rather than the property's personal finances and see how well the property supports the mortgage, right? This is kind of what you want because this also makes buying more properties easier just because the banks will now treat this as a business. And the final point I want to make is to constantly review your goals. Throughout this journey, you're going to be experiencing great moments and roadblocks. You might have moments of losing momentum and getting frustrated with situations with tenants, managers, brokers, and even things that you probably have no control over in terms of the economy, right? So it's very important to review your goals and your financial benchmarks during these times, just because even when you have successfully completed a transaction and you have all your money back and maybe this property you got an extra 50 to 100 grand, it's easy to lose sight and go spend that money and go, live that high life. At the end of the day, you need to look at your goals and stay focused. And one of the things I've learned in life is when you create a goal, the goal should never change, but the way you get there might have to change. Right? There are things in the economy that you have no control over, and sometimes they prevent you from pursuing that same path you were on. So what that means is you just have to re-strategize and go around the problem, go around the roadblock, right? Or sometimes you got to go through the roadblock. But at the end of the day, your goal shouldn't change, but the way you get there might have to. If you enjoyed that video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll make similar content in the future.